Yes, now we better start because I have another class coming up. Okay, so again, just to remind you, what we have been learning is we have been learning about 3 trainings. The training in discipline, the moral ethics, training in samadhi, meditation, absorption, and training in wisdom, pragyana. From these 3 kinds of training, we have been learning about the first one, which is regarding the moral ethics, the discipline of the moral ethic. So from that, then the larger part, the major part actually that we did was this particular discipline called discipline of refraining from 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions. So this discipline of refraining from 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions concerns the teachings regarding the karma. So this is why we went in detail actually about the karma. But we have to keep in mind this teaching is about karma, but it's not only about karma. It actually is about this one particular discipline called discipline of refraining from 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions, which means then engaging in 10 kinds of virtuous actions. So this actually is very much the foundation of all the disciplines. As we can see that if one did not, refrain oneself from engaging in 10 kinds of negative actions, it is not possible to develop the remaining, disciplines at all. So therefore, there are steps. So the very first step that is the door for entering into Dharma is actually this discipline called discipline of refraining from 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions. You can see now that the importance of this. So then how to know the meaning of this particular discipline called refraining from 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions? It's very important to know about the karmas because it concerns the actions of the body, speech, and mind, negative actions of body, speech, and mind. Refraining the negative actions of the body, of the speech, of the mind. So now you see the connection, how it becomes a discipline and how this discipline concerns the knowledge of the karma. And through this knowledge of karma, how can one help oneself to refrain from 10 kinds of negative actions? And then, of course, engage in 10 kinds of virtuous actions. So this is what we have been doing so far. I just wanted to remind you. Okay, Carlos.
Bueno, debemos empezar pronto porque después de esto tengo otra clase que dictar. Pero quiero empezar recordándoles lo que hemos venido estudiando. El tema general se llama los 3 entrenamientos. El primero se refiere al entrenamiento de la disciplina moral, el segundo el entrenamiento de la meditación o del samadhi y el tercero el entrenamiento de la sabiduría. De estos 3 entrenamientos hemos estudiado el primero, el de la ética moral, y la mayor parte de esto se refiere al entrenamiento en refrenarnos o no involucrarnos en las 10 acciones no virtuosas. Esto también se conoce entonces o está dentro del conocimiento del karma y por eso hemos estudiado el karma en detalle. Pero pues no es solamente karma, ¿sí? Es refrenarnos de esas 10 acciones no virtuosas y por el contrario involucrarnos en las 10 acciones virtuosas. ¿Por qué? porque sin este comportamiento ético, digamos, no se puede seguir el camino. Se dice entonces que el entrenamiento en las 10 acciones virtuosas y el entrenarse en las 10 acciones no virtuosas es la puerta de entrada al Dharma. Por eso es importante entonces conocer las acciones que nosotros debemos evitar con nuestro cuerpo, habla y mente para poder, digamos, continuar en el Dharma. Ahora ustedes ven la conexión de cómo las enseñanzas sobre el karma, las enseñanzas sobre las acciones virtuosas y no virtuosas se conectan con el resto del Dharma, digamos. Ok, Khempo.
So now today we are going to learn more about different types of vows. And these vows are linked with different types of discipline, actually. In general, there are 3 types of discipline. Discipline belonging to the Hinayana, discipline belonging to the Mahayana, and then discipline belonging to the Vajrayana. And accordingly, there are 3 vows. Vows, mainly belonging to the Hinayana, and then Bodhisattva Yana and Vajrayana, so to speak. In general, we call 3 vows, So what are these 3 vows? The first vow is, the 7 kinds of vows for liberation. So there's 7 kinds of liberation, vows for liberation, usually are termed as, vows or disciplines belonging to the Hinayana, so to speak. Second kind of vow are the Bodhisattva vows. Naturally, then it, is a vow regarding the Mahayana path. And the Vajrayana vows, all the Samayas, of course, Vajrayana vow are the Samayas. Then now those are the Tantrayana vows. So we have these 3 kinds of vows. But when we speak of the 3 trainings, in the 3 training, the very first training, which is the training regarding discipline or moral ethic, actually does not really, refer to the latter 2 vows. It mainly deals with the first vow, the 7 liberation vows, because the 7 liberation vow is very much the foundation for the later vows. So today also we are not going to talk about Bodhisattva vow or Vajrayana vow. We're just going to go very briefly through the meaning of the first vow, that is 7 liberation vows. Here we will have 8 actually vows, which I will explain you. The 8th vow is what we call as, 8 precepts for lay people. Anyway, so this I will explain a bit in more. There are 2 things, like the vow, for example, in Tibetan, the word for the vow is dompa. The word is dompa. Dompa actually means controlling. It has the sense of controlling my body, my speech, my mind from engaging in non-virtuous actions. So it has the sense of refraining, right? Refraining is a better word, I think, in this case, than controlling, because that's what we use. So dompa, but then it is, it is translated as vows. Vow as in a promise, correct? You take the vow, for example, like we have a refuge vow. That's because we make these promises either to ourselves or to the teacher or to the path. Generally, I like to think all the three actually. I promise to myself, I promise to the path, meaning to Dharma, and then of course I promise to the teacher. In this case, our teacher actually. What do I promise? I promise that I will behave properly. So when we say I behave, it actually means I will behave according to Dharma, which means I will refrain myself as much as possible from non-dharmic activities. So this is the concept of the vow. That's why we are actually using the word called vow, the word dompa, refraining, just so that you know the meaning actually. So it's actually quite profound. That's what I think, profound in the sense like whatever we do in our life, whether it is regarding Dharma or whether it is just a common thing, there always is this, let's say, sense of commitment, correct? A commitment is a very good word actually. So when I commit myself, there is a sense of promise. I don't have to literally use a word actually, or go to someone and, kind of say, I promise. But when I commit myself in my mind to this, activities, or in common actually, like you commit to your studies, you want to become a doctor, a scientist, so then you commit yourself to those, educations. That's also a commitment. Also in Dharma, when we are studying Dharma, when we're learning Dharma, then we are also, it's same way, we also commit ourselves to these different aspects of the Dharma. So this kind of commitment is understood as the vows. Okay.
Entonces hay varios tipos de votos. Hoy vamos a hablar hoy vamos a hablar de los votos y estos se refieren a los tipos de disciplina. Entonces hay votos Hinayana, votos Mahayana y votos Vajrayana, ¿sí? Los votos Hinayana pues se llaman así, los votos del Mahayana son los del Bodhisattvayana, o sea, el camino del Bodhisattva, y los últimos son los votos del Vajrayana. En los primeros votos, en los votos del Hinayana, se habla de 7 votos para la liberación. En el segundo están los votos del Bodhisattvayana, que son los del camino del Mahayana. Y el tercero están los votos del Vajrayana, que tienen que ver con los samayas, o con los vínculos que se utilizan en las prácticas tántricas. En los 3 entrenamientos, pero veníamos hablando de 3 entrenamientos, ¿sí? El entrenamiento, los votos no aplican a los 2 últimos entrenamientos, solamente aplican al primer entrenamiento. Entonces, hoy solo vamos a hablar del primer tipo de votos, de los 7 votos de la liberación Hinayana. Y ahí no entendí porque mencionó que hay 8 votos o preceptos laicos, entonces no sé por qué en un sitio dice 7 y en otros 8, pero son los 7 preceptos laicos que nosotros, perdón, los 8 preceptos laicos que nosotros hemos tomado a veces. En tibetano, la palabra que se usa es dompa. Dom quiere decir controlar, controlar nuestras acciones de cuerpo, habla y mente. O mejor aún, la palabra que utilizan es y mente. Y pa significa como el que. Entonces, el que se refrena. Entonces, eso quiere decir dompa. Y dompa se traduce como voto o como promesa. ¿Y qué es lo que, pues, a quién le prometemos? Y pues a la primera persona a quien le prometemos es a nosotros mismos, es un compromiso con nosotros mismos. También está el compromiso con el camino o con el Dharma, y también el compromiso con el maestro. de quien estamos tomando los votos. ¿Sí? ¿Y qué es lo que prometemos? ¿O cuál es el compromiso que estamos asumiendo? El de conducirnos de acuerdo con el Dharma. Todo lo que nosotros hacemos en la vida, de alguna manera, conlleva un compromiso. No siempre lo tenemos que expresar abiertamente, pero pues este compromiso siempre está en nuestra mente. Sea lo que sea que hagamos, pero lo que nosotros hacemos, lo hacemos, digamos, con cierto compromiso. Como por ejemplo, si queremos convertirnos en médicos o en científicos, pues entonces hay un compromiso con nosotros mismos de comprometernos con el estudio, digamos. Igual es en el Dharma. Nosotros nos comprometemos y esos compromisos es a lo que les llamamos los votos. Okay.
So now there are two kinds of commitment in general, let's say, like commitment with Dharma and commitment with non-Dharma activities. In Abhidharma teachings, in Vinaya, we speak about, Buddha speaks about lifetime commitment. Like, lifetime commitment with Dharma and lifetime commitment with non-Dharma activities. For this is regarding the duration, actually. It's more about the duration. So like, for example, when the any of the seven liberation vows, for the lay, 2 of them are for lay people and 5 for the ordained people. When we take these vows, these are the vows that we take, not for a month or a year or something like that, but for lifetime. It is more of a mental commitment, actually, so to speak. Like someone who mentally commits oneself to Dharma, and commits oneself or devotes, commit to Dharma for lifetime, so to say. The non-virtuous commitment or non-dharmic commitment, lifetime commitment, are like, for example, people who are born in the families of butchers, let's say. So because my father, grandfather, great-great-grandfather, let's say, so it's been a family business, so to speak. It's been a family business. Therefore, since I'm born to that family, very naturally, sort of take up this business. So this is a business of killing, of course, but I don't think one has this sense of, oh, I'm going to kill these things, but it's just like livelihood. It's more about livelihood. So their livelihood depends on, on these kind of activities, taking life of animals. So from that moment onwards, as soon as I sort of take upon mentally that business, then that kind of commitment is born in me. It's not that every morning I have to commit to that. I don't actually. It's very natural that I go to the work, I go to the shop, and I do those things. And that's my, very routine, everyday thing. So that's, what we call as lifetime commitment. But this can actually change. If it doesn't at all change, and if that's how they live, then that's a lifetime commitment. So we are saying very generally. so to speak, especially during Buddha's time. Back in time, there were not so many opportunities to do a whole lot different things. And at the same time, there was this culture, that father's business must be taken upon by the children. And it was also because of the caste. So it was like they belonged to this caste of the butcher, of this different caste that we have, races and caste. So they had those issues. And due to that, they were actually not allowed to do other things, right? Time point of view. So this may not apply nowadays in our time exactly, because you can pretty much do what you want. You don't really have to follow the footsteps of your father or mother. And I don't think people do that very much. So maybe it is not very, very relevant. But nonetheless, there is this example actually, as far as this example is concerned. So these two kind of commitment, let's say commitment for life, because that's what these two individuals commit themselves to live their life as, correct? So then it does become a lifetime commitment, so to speak. Because in the Abhidharma teachings and in Vinaya, this actually is more regarding the Vinaya. In Vinaya, Buddha always speaks about, the dharmic activities and the non-dharmic activities. And dharmic activities for lifetime and non-dharmic activities also for lifetime, so to speak. So, so yes, there is that. And then the third category actually is, occasional commitment, we can say. Occasional commitment is again regarding the time. The Mahayana Sojourn vow, right? Mahayana Sojourn vow is actually occasional. Occasional meaning you do that occasionally, once in a month maybe, and it's just for a day, for a day as in 24 hours. And it's not something that one tend to do, continuously. So therefore, this, actually there are other examples, and I would like to give that because it's good. Like for example, let's say I decide that for this month, I want to do prostration every day, not in terms of 100,000. I just, make this decision in my mind that every morning when I wake up, I want to do at least 10 prostrations. You can do half prostration or you can do full prostration, but it doesn't matter. So then I mentally commit myself doing those things for a month. I said a month, right? So this kind of thing. It's like any other commitment we do in our life. Like you're smoking. So like promise that I will not smoke. But this is not really a dharmic thing, but anyway, it's very similar to that. Or an alcohol or gambling, for example. Perhaps that's how you can lose the habit. I'm not going to go too much into that, but I also don't know if you can lose that. But I hope, yes, you build up the habit of that. Anyway, so here, like non-dharma also same. Like mentally, I sort of, decide that I will steal for, a month or something like that. Or I will hunt, for example. So I have, okay, now I'm going to hunt. But here the concept is not killing, I guess. You just want to hunt. But when you hunt, you're killing. So you are actually committing very bad karma. Or I'm going to go fish for like 10 hours or 5 hours. Anyway, so now you get the idea. But these are occasional. So from this point of view, then how we commit to this, dharmic activities, non-dharmic activities, and the duration, how long you do that is pretty much dependent on actually oneself. But there are these certain, let's say, categories, especially the liberation vows. There is no option, it is for lifetime. But bodhisattva vow and refuge vow are actually for infinite time, so to speak. But anyway, that's a slightly different thing. So yes, there are this, when it comes to the vow, the commitment, from the time point of view, there are these different duration that we commit ourselves to. Okay.
Digamos, con el Vinaya se habla de dos tipos de compromisos. Los compromisos con el Dharma y los compromisos con no Dharma, ¿sí? El Vinaya habla de compromisos de toda la vida en el Dharma y también de compromisos de toda la vida en el no Dharma, ¿sí? Entonces, cuando tomamos los 7 votos, que dos de esos 7 votos le aplican a los laicos y 5 a los monjes, esos votos en el Vinaya se toman de por vida, digamos, por toda la vida. Entonces, alguien se compromete con el Dharma y pues, digamos, se compromete a hacer actividad del Dharma por toda la vida. Y también existen los que no se comprometen con el Dharma por toda la vida. El ejemplo más claro era en la época del Buda, es el de, digamos, un carnicero que es carnicero porque su papá fue carnicero y su abuelo carnicero y su bisabuelo carnicero, ¿sí? Entonces él pues todos los días se levanta y va y hace el trabajo y está comprometido con su trabajo toda la vida. No es que en la mañana él se levante y diga, hoy voy a matar animales porque ese es mi compromiso. No, simplemente esa es su forma de vida, así se la gana. Él, digamos, heredó eso, ¿sí? Eso en el tiempo de Buda era muy frecuente, muy común, porque pues existía el sistema de castas, entonces pues eran muy pocas las opciones de trabajo que existían. Y básicamente la casta definía qué tipo de trabajo hacía uno. Entonces, si uno nacía en una familia de carniceros, pues era muy poca la posibilidad de hacer otra cosa. Simplemente se dedicaba al negocio familiar y se convertía en carnicero. Esto, pues obviamente es diferente hoy en día. Hoy no tenemos que seguir los pasos de nuestros padres. De hecho, es raro que los hijos sigan el negocio de sus padres, pero de todas formas, pues en el Vinaya está y por eso se habla. Estos dos tipos de compromisos de por vida, entonces, están especificados en el Buda y en el Vinaya, y el Buda hablaba de diferentes actividades de Dharma y no Dharma de por vida. También hay otra categoría que es el compromiso ocasional y se refiere a mantener el compromiso durante una duración de tiempo, y esto se hace de manera ocasional, no se hace todo el tiempo, sino de vez en cuando. Entonces, por ejemplo, puedo comprometerme a hacer o no hacer algo durante 24 horas cada mes. O me puedo poner otro tiempo de duración. Puedo comprometerme a que durante este mes voy a hacer al menos 10 postraciones todos los días. Entonces me levanto, recuerdo el compromiso, voy y hago las postraciones y eso lo hago durante un mes. O puede ser que yo me comprometa a abstenerme de algo y decir, durante un mes no voy a fumar, o no voy a jugar, o no voy a tomar alcohol. Y de esta manera, entonces, esto me ayuda a deshacerme de ese hábito. Pero también hay otros que se pueden comprometer con acciones no dármicas dañinas, como por ejemplo el que se compromete con robar todo un mes, ¿sí? Dice, por el próximo mes robaré todos los días. Bueno, esto es raro, pero por ejemplo hay otros que sí se pueden comprometer, por ejemplo, con cazar. Entonces dice, eh, ahora que está abierta la temporada de caza, me comprometeré a cazar lo más que pueda. O el pescador dice, este fin de semana me iré de pesca y pescaré por lo menos 5 horas diarias. ¿Sí? Entonces están haciendo un compromiso consigo mismos, digamos, que implica matar. ¿Sí? Así es como entonces nos comprometemos con acciones del Dharma o con acciones de no del Dharma por diferentes periodos de tiempo. Y esto entonces da origen a las diferentes categorías de los votos que tomamos. Entonces, recordando, los votos de la liberación, los 7 votos de la liberación, se toman por toda una vida. No hay opción. Esos no se pueden tomar por un tiempo y después decir, no, ahorita no y después vuelvo. Eso se toman por toda la vida. En cambio, los votos Mahayana se pueden tomar por periodos de tiempo definidos o también se puede tomar por un periodo de tiempo infinito que trasciende esta vida. Ok, Khempo.
So, according to Vinaya, there are these 3 terms. Refrainment. First is refrainment. So the refrainment is like what I explained for lifetime, which is regarding Dharma actually. So that's regarding Dharma for lifetime. Then non-refrainment. Non-refrainment is commitment to non-virtuous actions, non-dharmic actions for lifetime. And then occasional refrainment, which is done occasionally. I'm using these terms because these terms in Tibetan are actually very profound. And also it gives you, this glimpses into the meaning, like refrainment, for example. How is refrainment connected with virtuous actions? It's very understandable. I am refraining myself from engaging in non-virtuous actions. Therefore, I am not committing non-virtuous actions. Instead, I am, committing to the virtuous actions. So therefore, the meaning of refrainment is, commitment to virtuous actions. Then non-refrainment, when I am not refraining myself from engaging in non-virtuous actions through the 3 doors of the body, speech, and mind, then I'm very naturally engaging in non-virtuous actions, right? Non-dharmic actions. So therefore, non-refrainment, is linked with non-virtuous actions. Occasional refrainment has both, actually. The occasional refrainment and non-refrainment, both, correct? Occasional should be both, because occasionally, if this was an occasional refrainment, then it is like what I gave you this example of committing oneself for Dharma. Like that's like going to a retreat for a month or for a week. Let's say that is the refrainment, but it's occasional. And if I go on hunting for a week, that's non-refrainment, right? So I'm just, trying to give you these terms: refrainment, non-refrainment, occasional refrainment, and occasional non-refrainment. It makes it easier to keep in mind.
Bueno, entonces en Vinaya se habla de 3 términos: refrenarse, que es lo que he explicado hasta ahora, y se toma de por vida si se refiere a los votos Vinaya. El no refrenarse, y se refiere a dedicarse a actividades del Dharma, y ocasionalmente refrenarse. que se los expliqué como cuando, por ejemplo, uno deja de hacer algo de lo que quiere liberarse. Pero pues hablo de esto porque en tibetano los tres términos de refrenarse, no refrenarse y refrenarse ocasionalmente tienen un significado muy profundo, ¿sí? Por ejemplo, podríamos preguntarnos, ¿cómo refrenarse está relacionado con los actos no virtuosos? Y pues claramente, si yo me refreno, entonces me estoy comprometiendo a no ejecutar esos actos no virtuosos y por el contrario me estoy comprometiendo con los actos virtuosos. Cuando yo no me refreno de los 10 actos no virtuosos, entonces fácilmente caigo en ellos, porque digamos, no tengo la vigilancia que me advierte que estoy pasando un límite, digamos. Eh, pero también puede existir el refrenarse ocasionalmente. Por ejemplo, cuando vamos a un retiro. Entonces, en un retiro tenemos que adoptar ciertos compromisos, pero eso lo hacemos solamente durante el tiempo del retiro. O también yo puedo no refrenarme por un tiempo, como por ejemplo cuando digo, esta semana me voy de cacería. Entonces, por eso quería mencionarlos. Okay.
Now, in Vinaya and also in Abhidharma, you know, there's a term that we use for that, and the term is perceptible form, imperceptible form, which means visible form, invisible form. Now, if I ask you guys this question that, you know, are these vows, can we see this vow? Meaning, are this vow visible? Visible meaning visible to mind, not to mind, but visible to eye consciousness, actually. So if I ask question, can we see vows? Our very natural act, I would like to believe is, no, you cannot see the vow. Can you see the vow, actually? Can you see that vow, the commitment? But then, you know, at the same time, I mean, if I ask you a question, you know, that are these vows form? Most probably all of you will say it's not a form. And perhaps that's the answer I think I will get from everybody. But here, according to Abhidharma teachings and Vinaya, the vows of the Vinaya vows, all the three vows, you know, Vajrayana vow and Bodhisattva vows, these vows they are form, actually. So that's, I think, a little bit sometimes difficult to, you know, to perceive, I think, for us. Like, how can this vow be a form? So there actually is quite a good reason behind that. And I hope I can explain this, you know, clearly. The reason why these vows are called, I mean, why the vows have form is because, not because mind has a form, but because our speech, you know, has a form. And at the same time, our body, you know, has also form, because both the speech and both the body are embodiment of elements, 4 elements or 5 elements. If we include consciousness, we can say 5 elements. So when this vow is in my body, in my speech, in my mind, the vow is supported mainly by the speech and the body. So which means that the foundation of the vow actually is, you know, is these, you know, elements actually. Elements belonging to those people who have those vows and who give those vows. So it's therefore it's said in the Vinaya and in Abhidharma teachings that, but these are very subtle form. Of course, it's not a gross form though. It's very subtle form, very subtle particles of element. It's not like, very solid, but very subtle particles of the element. But nonetheless, they are very subtle particles of the elements. So that's why it is mentioned that they have form. Another way of understanding that is when we do prostration, for example, we use our body, correct? So I'm accumulating merit through my body. But the way I accumulate that is physically, actually, I'm accumulating that merit. The vow itself may be not visible, but the physical gesture is visible. Like when you do the prostration, for example, or when I'm doing prostration, I'm chanting the mantras, I'm chanting the line, that's speech. Again, I am accumulating merit. I am engaging virtuous action through body and through speech too. So from the speech, those are the sounds, and the physical gesture, like the body gesture, we are able to understand what these people are doing actually from the Dharma point of view, right? So therefore, there is this connection between the virtuous activities of the body, of the speech, to their vows or to their commitment, so to speak, by doing that. So anyway, so therefore, here it kind of becomes important to bring up this word because whenever we talk about the vows, then the vows are always connected with what we call as the imperceptible form. They are not perceptible form. So I'm here, I think I already explained to you that the virtuous activities of the body and of the speech, they are perceptible from their, from their gestures. But as far as the mental commitment is concerned, that actually is imperceptible. We can't really see the intention. We can't really see the motivation, the, let's say, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. We cannot see that, right? So they are then imperceptible, so to speak.
So which are the ones that are imperceptible? How did you call them? The bodhicitta, the loving kindness.
Yeah.
How did you call them?
Anything that's connected with the mind, mental consciousness, right? So there is a, this is how we differentiate actually. But the commitment itself is really not the commitment of the body of the speech, correct? What commits? Does body commit? Does speech commit? Or does mind commit? Only mind can commit, correct? Body cannot commit, speech cannot commit. Is that understandable? So therefore, as far as the nature of the vow is concerned, that's imperceptible or invisible simply because it's not connected to the speech or to the body, but it's linked to the mental consciousness.
Ok. En Vinaya y Abhidharma hay un término que yo le entendía al Khempo preceptable form, y preceptable existe y es que se puede convertir en un precepto legal, pero al final creo que se refiere a si es perceptible, si tiene una forma perceptible o no tiene una forma perceptible. Entonces, porque después hablo también de la conciencia visual y nos preguntamos, ¿podemos ver con la conciencia visual el voto, el compromiso? O preguntado de otra forma, ¿son los votos forma? Porque lo que ven los ojos son forma, ¿sí? Y muchos dirían, y el Khempo cree que todos nosotros responderíamos que no, que el compromiso no es forma. Pero de acuerdo con el Vinaya y el Abhidharma, todos los votos son forma, ¿sí? Esto es algo difícil de percibir, de entender, pero hay una buena razón, y la razón es que el habla tiene forma, el habla sí es perceptible, y el cuerpo también tiene forma, también es perceptible, porque están constituidos de los 4 elementos, o de los 5 elementos si además le aumentamos o le incluimos el elemento conciencia. Entonces, el fundamento del voto son los 4 elementos, de la gente que toma el voto o de quien da el voto, ¿sí? Ahora, es una forma muy sutil, no es una forma burda, pero de todas formas es forma. Por ejemplo, cuando nosotros hacemos postraciones, usamos el cuerpo, ¿sí? Acumulamos mérito por medio del ejercicio físico del cuerpo. Y este es un gesto perfectamente visible. Y también recitamos un mantra o una recitación. Esto también es visible, visible en el sentido que es habla y el habla se puede percibir. Entonces, por los gestos de la persona y por lo que está expresando con su habla, nosotros podemos fácilmente reconocer qué es lo que está haciendo. Por eso decimos que tienen forma. En cambio, los preceptos mentales no son perceptibles, digamos, como por ejemplo la bodichita o el amor bondadoso. ¿Qué se compromete? Esta es la pregunta. ¿Nos comprometemos con el cuerpo? ¿Nos comprometemos con el habla? O sea, ¿puede el habla comprometerse o puede el cuerpo comprometerse? La respuesta claramente es no. Lo único que puede comprometerse es la mente, ¿sí? Pero entonces, en el caso de los preceptos mentales como la bodichita o el amor bondadoso, que solamente se dan en la mente, pues estos son imperceptibles porque se refieren a la conciencia mental.
Okay. So, yes. You know, there are 2 ways how things are perceived. One, through eye consciousness, I would like to think, right? And the other actually is through mind, through the eyes of the mind, meaning mental consciousness. Mainly 2 ways. But I'm not going to go in detail when, you know, there are 5 different forms that are perceived by the mental consciousness. So one of the form that is object of mental consciousness, the 6th is actually the imperceptible forms, so to speak. Another example I can give you is when we visualize, when you do Guru Yoga or Yidam practice, all that we see, the images, the visualization is a form, correct? But those forms are what? Kerim, actually, that has to do with the Kerim. That's called Kerim. So there's forms that I see of the Yidam or the Lama are mental form. They are not an actual form. So now you see what I mean in this case. So therefore, the virtues, non-virtues are state of a mind, actually. You know, because virtues is a state of mind, non-virtues is also a state of a mind. And it is directly connected with our mind, the mental consciousness. It doesn't really have to do anything with the sense consciousnesses. Eye, ear, nose, tongue consciousness do not, you know, decide that. But mind does, the sixth consciousness. So it's a good way of differentiating what mind creates karma. You know, so the mind that really creates karma is really the mental consciousness itself, so to speak. So anyways, so now it is that in the teachings, like in Vinaya, very often by Buddha, that, you know, that this, the refrainment and the non-refrainment state of the mind is very important. Why? Because as soon as I generate that refrainment state of the mind, from that moment onward, I will start accumulating merit. Whether I physically engage in virtuous actions or whether I don't, doesn't really matter. As soon as I develop this motivation, this state of the mind that I am going to practice, then from that moment onward, it says that the merit will, you know, the virtues will keep increasing. Okay. And same with the non-refrainment state of the mind. As soon as I develop this mind, from that moment onward, whether I physically engage in those activities or not, doesn't matter. The non-virtues, you know, will keep increasing until the time that state of the mind is destroyed. Both state of the mind is destroyed. So that's why it says whether you are walking or whether you are just chatting or sitting or doing anything you may be doing. But the virtuous state of the mind and the non-virtuous state of the mind are actually increasing every moment, every second. Is this understandable? It's actually very powerful from that point of view. So he says one needs to be very conscious about, you know, this refrainment state of the mind and non-refrainment state of the mind, especially, I guess, non-refrainment state of the mind. We need to be very conscious because we don't want that. We want to destroy that non-refrainment state of the mind as much as possible. We want to interrupt that. But of course, we want to develop the refrainment state of the mind because we want our merit to increase. Okay.
Hay dos formas de preceptos. Perdón, hay dos formas de percepción. Una, la que podemos tener con la conciencia visual, cuando vemos formas, y otra, la percepción por medio de la conciencia mental, ¿sí? Aquí estoy usando las formas visuales, pero hay 5 tipos de formas que son percibidas por la conciencia mental. Pero aplica a todas ellas, pero usamos la visual como ejemplo. Entonces, por ejemplo, nosotros podemos ver objetos físicos, pero también podemos ver objetos no físicos. Por ejemplo, cuando nos involucramos en la práctica de Yidam, en las prácticas con deidades, aquí nosotros estamos construyendo una visualización y estamos viendo formas, la forma del Yidam o la forma del Lama, pero estas no son formas físicas, son formas mentales, ¿sí? De la misma manera también hay estados mentales virtuosos y no virtuosos, pero eso no tiene nada que ver con lo que nosotros hacemos con las conciencias de los sentidos, ¿sí? Es la conciencia mental la que crea el karma. Entonces, durante los tiempos del Buda, en las enseñanzas del Vinaya, él hablaba de refrenarse y no refrenarse, y estos son muy importantes porque son estados mentales. Entonces, cuando yo tengo una mente de refrenarme, perdón, una mente de no refrenarme, entonces paro de acumular mérito, ¿sí? Tan pronto yo me comprometo con la práctica o con el refrenarme, entonces mi mérito seguirá incrementando, ¿sí? Por el contrario, las acciones no virtuosas, si yo no me comprometo, o sea, si no tengo una mente de refrenarme, todas las acciones no virtuosas seguirán incrementando, ¿sí? Entonces, por eso es que refrenarse y no refrenarse tienen un efecto creciente en el tiempo. Digamos, su efecto sigue creciendo, ¿sí? Por eso es que queremos destruir el estado mental de no refrenarse. Ok, Khempo.
So what that meant is it's very important for us to try to experience as much as possible a very positive state of the mind. Positive as in virtuous, right? Very virtuous state of the mind as much as possible. And try to avoid negative state of the mind towards oneself, towards other people as much as possible. Because these are source of our emotions and source of actually our feelings. Suffering, happiness are connected with this state of the mind. They are inside our mind. Our suffering is inside our mind. Our pain is inside our mind. Everything actually is inside our mind. They are not really outside there. People cannot exactly give it to us. Then why do we, experience, or why do we have these emotions? Is because these emotions are, are our mind actually. That's me, that's my state, that's my being, so really that's my existence. So the rest of the world, they are merely a condition actually, which happens to trigger all of those emotions and feelings that are there in my mind, so to say. So anyway, here, it's so important to, generate loving kindness and compassion. Okay, let's say think about loving kindness, compassion, think about bodhicitta. I think that's really important. What I'm trying to say is we always should try to think about love, kindness, good things, positive things, virtuous things. But in Buddhism, then we have names for them, which is actually very good. If I did that, then I will be strengthening and growing the virtuous nature of the mind, which then in turn will reduce the non-virtuous state of the mind, the emotions actually, will be reduced, will be subdued. Then one will start experiencing more virtue state of the mind, correct? So therefore, it's really important to tell myself, to remind myself, the Dharma teachings all the time. Not just one Dharma, two Dharma, three Dharma. I mean, not only about karma, not only about bodhicitta, not only about emptiness. Why I have to think only from one side of these teachings? Why I cannot think all of them? So sometimes one think more from compassion point of view, according to the situation. Sometimes one remind oneself about karma because of the situation. And then sometimes one remind oneself of impermanence because of the situation. And then sometimes one, remind oneself of emptiness because of the situation. And it is very true when you have this situation. And when we are able to do that, when we are able to bring these very profound teachings on emptiness, on karma, illusion-like nature, bodhicitta, they can definitely, 100% help us. If these cannot help us, there's nothing that can help us at all, actually. Not a Buddha, not a miracle power, no one can help us. Only we can help ourselves. Only I can help myself. But this knowledge, thanks to Buddha, thanks to all the sublime beings, my knowledge about emptiness, about impermanence, about karma, about bodhicitta, that knowledge which is within myself is what we have to use as a tool, to really eradicate all these emotions and suffering we have in our mind. So we have that potential, we have that cause inside us. It's just that we are not using them. We are always sort of depending on someone else. In this case, perhaps a physical individual in terms of Lama or in terms of Yedam. So we literally think, oh, Tara will come to me and then she will do something with my mind. Or Chinese will literally come and then do something with my mind. That actually is not how it works. That can never work, in fact, right? These are all tools, meaning very, very profound, skillful means for, to eliminate our ego, emotions, all that actually. So that's an important thing for us to remember.
Lo que esto significa es que es muy importante para nosotros tratar de experimentar estados mentales positivos o virtuosos lo más frecuentemente posible y tratar de evitar los estados negativos o no virtuosos, porque esos son la fuente de las emociones y de todo nuestro sufrimiento. Nuestro sufrimiento es mental, no es externo. Nosotros tenemos emociones porque son mi mente, ese soy yo, esa es mi existencia cuando estoy teniendo una emoción. El mundo externo solo es la condición para que yo pueda experimentar esa emoción. Por lo tanto, es importante desarrollar el amor bondadoso, la compasión, la bodhicitta, lo más que podamos, ¿sí? Porque si lo logro, así estaré incrementando los estados virtuosos de la mente y evitando los estados no virtuosos de la mente. Por eso es importante recordar las enseñanzas del Dharma, como la compasión, el karma, la impermanencia, la vacuidad, dependiendo de la situación en la que estemos. Se nos presenta una situación, ¿sí? Si en ese momento somos capaces de traer a la mente las enseñanzas que atañen a esa circunstancia, eso nos ayudará tremendamente. De resto, nadie nos puede ayudar, ni un Buda, ni un milagro, ni un Dios nos pueden ayudar. Solo yo me puedo ayudar con base en el conocimiento del Dharma que me permite erradicar las emociones y por lo tanto el sufrimiento en nuestra mente. Pero resulta que eso no lo usamos, estamos demasiado, digamos, programados para depender de otros. Entonces le pedimos al Lama, le pedimos a Tara, le pedimos a Chenrezig que vengan y que nos ayuden. Pero pues esto nunca sucederá, esto no funciona así. Tara, Chenrezig, el Lama son solamente métodos hábiles para eliminar el apego al ego. Esto es importante recordarlo todo el tiempo. Okay.
All right. So now, so those are the definition of vows. Like refrainment is the word I was using more often. Refrainment, non-refrainment, occasional refrainment, non-refrainment, so to speak. But and now regarding the vows themselves, so like I was saying here, this is regarding the 7 liberation vows. It's not really regarding the Bodhisattva vow or Vajrayana vow. So the 7 liberation vows are very easy. I mean, 5 of them are, the vows regarding the ordained people. Well, I mean, okay, let's say ordained people. That means monks and nuns. And then 2 of them are for lay people, correct? Genyin vow is for lay people, as we understand. Now, I mean, it's then this itself is a very huge teaching. This actually is Vinaya, the teachings, we find in the Vinaya. Vinaya, I think it's, Buddhist teaching on ethics. I don't know if this is the right word to use, but that's how I like it, actually. Because there is teachings regarding ethics in Buddhism. The whole body of this teaching regarding the ethics, is then termed as Vinaya. Ethic is not only about ethics, it actually is about what is ethical, what is not ethical. I like these terms, actually, really. Even in our world, we speak, these are very important. The ethical and unethical, and differentiating those, engaging in ethical things and refraining unethical things, activities, I should say. So anyway, so it becomes very huge because these are the different types of, rules that monks and nuns and lay people have to follow. So like the novice monk, so to speak, there are about 36 different types of rules you follow, so to speak. Novice, both monk and nun. And then when one becomes bhikshu, we call it gelong, gelong in Tibetan, gelong, bhikshu. They have about more than 253 different types of rules and regulations, and then as a, bhikshu, female bhikshu. Wow, female bhikshu actually has more than 360 something. Now I don't exactly remember this, but they have much more like rules and regulations to follow. So anyway, so it's actually about that, those rules, I should say, or disciplines, moral ethics that one needs to follow when one takes those vows. That is why the bhikshu vows, bhikshu has both male and, these all have male and female, as you understand, are not given until the age of 20 actually. But as far as the Sharmana vow, Sharmana meaning the Getsul, in Tibetan is Ge-sul, the novice monks' vows. So there is also male and female, boy and girl.
How do you call them? The
Getsul, Ge-sul,
Ge?
Sharmana, Shira, Mana, vows. That, as far as I remember, are given at the age of 8, I guess, because I myself, anyways. So when you are quite little, anyway, so we're not going to go into detail of those things. So, and now layperson's vows, that is Genyan, Upasaka and Upasika, I guess. That actually means male and female. It doesn't matter, both. The vow is same, but then there, in terms of individual, those who are male and those who are female, right? Then you have 5 different types of commitment, correct? So those are, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual, that actually is adultery, and lying. And then the 5th is, refraining from taking alcohol. So, or it actually means anything that's, that is nature or intoxication. So, which also can include all kinds of drugs, right? The 5th vow for the lay people. Anything that can intoxicate you, anything that can make you lose your mind, basically. So then that can, all kinds of drugs comes under that category, not just alcohol. Those are understandable. So 5 kinds of vows. And then these are vows that we take for lifetime. When we take the vow, we say, until I breathe my last. But as far as the Mahayana Sojon vow is concerned, Mahayana Sojon vow are also laypersons, 8 precepts. I'm not very sure about the word precept, what that really meant, but people are using those. So there are, those Sojon vows is very, Mahayana Sojon vow actually is better, because in Hinayana they also have this Theravadan tradition, they do, but the number of vows they have is only 5. Like in Theravadan tradition, so they only keep the first 5 vows, and then they don't really include the last 3 vows. Are you familiar with these 8 precepts? It's actually quite easy. When you, like, the first 3 are the, refraining from killing, stealing, and, sexual misconduct. And then the 4th actually is, refraining from refraining from lying. Big lie, actually. Here, lie is called big lie. That is lying, lying in terms of dharma, realization, and all that. So, yes, and then refraining from intoxication, refraining from alcohols. Again, here it refers to all of this, whatever makes your mind, lose the concentration, right? Then, so far we have 5. Then 6th one is, is actually, we call it untimely food. But untimely food is because of the vow. So that means you take this vow that one will refrain from eating after noon. It has to be after noon. Therefore, you eat at noon, a little bit before noon, 12 o'clock. So then afternoon food is not allowed because you took that vow. Then on top of that, refraining from singing and dancing is counted as one. But here it says singing and dancing that are not part of dharma. Like you can chant dharma, for example, right? Very melodiously when you do. So that's singing actually. But then you can do that because that's part, not mundane thing, but that's connected with your dharma practice. Or you can even do these, the musics like damaru, bell. Those are part of actually music. What do you call that? So you can do those things. Anyway, so that's understandable. And also here, what one includes is refraining from, jewels, like, refraining from, yes, wearing, jewels, wearing perfumes. Those, they are counted as one, actually. All these 4 are counted as one. But there are 4, right? But these 4 are counted as one. No singing, no dancing, no wearing of perfume, no wearing of jewels, all kind of jewels. So they're all counted as one, although there are 4. And then that's 7th. The 8th one is, avoiding or not using very decorated and expensive, expensive bed or chair where one would sit, actually. In the book, yes, it also talks about the height, that you don't want to sit on a very high chair. Of course, the traditional word is throne, that you don't want to sit on a very high throne. But I'm not sure if it is about the height. But yes, it really is about simplicity, because mentally I don't want to get attached to this material things. So therefore here he's saying refrain oneself from using valuable, objects, right? Like very expensive, very fancy. I think those are the things that we are including here. We always don't have to think from a very traditional point of view, actually, because those are fancy. Like when lamas sit on this thing, it's fancy, actually. So you don't want that fancy things, because it unnecessarily develops this craving in oneself, So it is for the sake of avoiding experiencing craving. That's why he's saying, oh, don't use those, very fancy, very exclusive, actually things, right? Even cloth-wise. But here we're referring to, but this is actually not in general. In general, if you did that, it's also good. But here, it's because now you have this vow. It does not mean that you are not allowed to do that. Generally, you can wear all kind of fancy stuff. It doesn't matter. It's not against Dharma. Please don't think that wearing perfume, jewel is against Dharma. It's not against Dharma. There is no bad karma in doing those things. So you can very much do that, and you should do that. But here, because for a day, it's very much like for a day, I want to live life of a very simple person, correct? Let's say I want to live the life of a monk or a Buddha for a day. It's a very good concept. I mean, monks nowadays is not exactly that way, but anyway, generally speaking, that's how monks should be. But nowadays, monks are more modern than lay people. Anyway, sometimes it's like that, really. Anyway, I'm not going to go in detail of all these things, but it's kind of opposite. Well, our Lama said that I myself feel, I feel myself about that too. Maybe it is a requirement, but there is also the desire, for like anything else. Monks really should do that actually instead of the lay people, Anyway, so I went a little bit outside of those things. So, yes, well, now these are about the vows and the Vinaya vows. So what you guys can do is Mahayana Sojong vow is actually really, really good. So perhaps you should do that whenever you have time. And whenever you feel like, once a month, twice a month, or 3 times a month. That 3 times a month may be too much for you guys, but maybe once a month. The Mahayana Sojong vow. So yes, this pretty much, let's say, brings us to the end of the teaching regarding the first training, which is training in, disciplines of the moral ethic. Oops. Oh. So, okay, then I need to stop here, but I'll take a few questions because then I have another session in actually half an hour.
Okay.
It's very strange. I'm teaching 10:30 here and I'm teaching 10:30 there, and both end at 12 o'clock. I just realized that. It just came to my mind, actually.
Bueno, entonces, las definiciones de los votos o refrenarse o no refrenarse. Ya hablamos de las definiciones de los votos: refrenarse, no refrenarse o refrenarse ocasionalmente. Con respecto a los 7 votos de la liberación, 5 son aplican a las personas ordenadas, o sea, monjes y monjas, y 2 aplican para los practicantes laicos. El Vinaya, entonces, es una enseñanza muy amplia sobre la ética o la moral, ¿sí? Aún en el mundo occidental, digamos, esto es muy importante, y nosotros debemos tener muy claro qué es ético, qué es no ético, en qué debemos refrenarnos, en qué debemos no refrenarnos, ¿sí? Entonces, con respecto a las reglas que deben seguir los monásticos, los novicios, o sea, los que todavía no son monjes totalmente ordenados, sino que están recién llegados, deben cumplir 36 reglas. Los bhikshu o gelong, que son los monjes plenamente ordenados, deben cumplir 253 reglas. Y las bhikshuni o monjas ordenadas deben cumplir algo más de 360 reglas o disciplinas, digamos. Uno solamente puede ser un monje ordenado a partir de los 20 años. Antes de eso, nunca le dan las 253 reglas para cumplir. Antes de eso, entonces se llama un Getsul o Shermana, y estos son los votos de los novicios que se pueden recibir desde los 8 años. Y también están entonces los Upasaka, que son los laicos, o Upasakas, que son las mujeres laigas, o Genjen en tibetano, y estos deben cumplir con 5 tipos de votos, que son los de no matar, no robar, no cometer adulterio, no mentir y no utilizar alcohol o cualquier otro tipo de intoxicantes que nos nuble la mente. ¿Sí? Estos votos upasakas a nivel del Hinayana, entonces se debe tomar de por vida. En el Mahayana es diferente. Aquí están los votos Soyón. En el Theravada los votos Soyón son solamente 5. Ellos no incluyen los últimos 3. En el Mahayana son 8 votos que incluyen los 5 Theravada más 3 votos adicionales. Entonces ya los primeros 5 los mencioné: no matar, no robar, no cometer adulterio. El no mentir se refiere realmente a lo que se llaman grandes mentiras. Y las grandes mentiras es mentir con respecto al Dharma, ¿sí? Y el quinto es no tomar alcohol o intoxicantes que nos nublan la mente y que nos llevan a distracciones y perder la concentración, digamos. Los otros 3 son, el sexto se refiere a no comer a destiempo. Esto quiere decir no comer en la tarde. Entonces, los días que tomamos los votos Soyón, deberíamos tratar de tomar la última comida, el almuerzo, antes de las 12 del día, ¿sí? El séptimo voto realmente incluye 4 cosas: no bailar, no cantar, no usar joyas preciosas y no usar perfumes. Cuando hablamos de bailar y cantar, esto se refiere a bailar y cantar cosas no dármicas, pero obviamente está permitido el recitar mantras y el cantar las canciones del Dharma, o también usar instrumentos musicales como el damaru, el tambor doble, ¿sí? Entonces, no cantar y no bailar se refiere a no dármicos, ¿sí? Y el octavo voto se refiere a no usar camas o sillas muy decoradas o muy costosas. En el texto se habla de camas o sillas altas, o también, pues no dicen sillas, sino tronos, y se refiere pues a los tronos que usan los lamas y los rinpoches en algunas de las iniciaciones que hacen. Pero pues realmente lo que esto significa es como tratar de tener una vida simple, ¿sí? Refrenarse de usar lujos y de generar esa avaricia por los lujos durante 24 horas, porque estos votos Soyón se toman por 24 horas. Ahora, no quiere decir que los perfumes o las joyas sean algo malo. No, el Dharma no tiene nada contra las joyas o los perfumes, ¿sí? Pueden usarlos perfectamente cuando no tomen los votos Soyón. El sentido de incluirlos en los votos Soyón, o el concepto de esto, es que durante 24 horas querramos tener una vida sencilla, ¿sí? Y no una vida signada por los lujos, ¿sí? Entonces, tomar estos votos Mahayana es muy bueno. Ojalá los puedan tomar una vez al mes, o 2 veces al mes, o 3 veces al mes. De pronto más de eso sería un poco difícil para los laicos, pero pues esto es muy bueno que lo hagan de vez en cuando. Con esto entonces concluimos lo que serían las enseñanzas sobre el comportamiento ético o sobre la disciplina moral. El Khempo tiene media hora una charla, entonces pues necesita descansar algo entre charla y charla, pero de pronto podría tomar un par de preguntas. Entonces, pues abrimos el campo para las preguntas. Actually, Khempo, I have a question. In not using high or expensive chairs, does that include cars? For example, if you have a very fancy car, you should refrain from using it because it's a symbol of status of you being more.
I don't think so. I don't think that really matters as far as the cars are concerned, and the seating, all the seats of the cars are concerned. It doesn't have to do anything with that because you know, it's very like it's produced that way. You did not make it yourself, so it was produced that way. So therefore, I don't think it has anything to do with the cars, the seats in the cars. I guess back in time. Cars.
Okay, thank you. Entonces,
so like I said, it's not really about the height. I'm not sure if it's about the height, that it is very high in that sense. But there is a meaning in that, because high in terms of pride, you tend to develop very pride. So that's why, like it has more to do with hierarchy status of the people, who is higher, who is lower. From that point of view, yes, you don't want that. But in general, I don't think, because if you're a very tall person, you naturally sit on something very high. And if you're short like me, you can't sit on that. You have to sit on something, smaller. So those doesn't really matter, actually.
Yo le pregunté si no sentarse en sillas costosas o incluía no usar carros, en el sentido de que pues la silla del carro no es que sea muy costosa, pero sí está en un carro muy costoso. Pero Khempo me dice que él cree que no tiene nada que ver, porque pues en el tiempo del Buda no había carros, pero sí había carrozas. Y pues obviamente había carrozas muy decoradas, las de los reyes y todo eso, pero él no lo mencionó. Entonces él cree que si hubiera problema con los carros, el Buda lo hubiera mencionado con respecto a las carrozas. Vamos a ver si hay preguntas. Para un principiante en budismo, ¿cuál es la mejor manera de comenzar? ¿Por medio de cuál práctica y por medio de cuáles votos? For a person that is just starting in Buddhism, which is the best way to start? With which practice and which kind of vows?
There's no need to take vows, actually. You just need to study. Please study as much as you can, learn as much as you can. When you learn, when you gain more knowledge, I think one quite very naturally starts. That's practice, actually. That's how you practice. So there is no rush. You don't have to rush to take refuge vow. There is no need for that. I'm not saying you don't have to do this at all. Of course, at one point of time, maybe it's good to do that. But really, you don't have to take a refuge vow to become Buddhist. So therefore, the best thing for one to do is to really listen, to these teachings and to try to grasp the meaning as much as possible. That's the most important for everybody, actually.
Entonces, el Khempo nos dice que para alguien que está apenas principiando en el budismo, no es necesario tomar votos ni hacer prácticas especiales, que lo más importante es el estudio, ¿sí? Por ejemplo, no es importante ni siquiera tomar el voto del refugio, no es urgente, no se requiere el voto del refugio para llamarse budista. lo más importante, y no solamente para los nuevos, sino para todo el mundo, es el entender el significado del Dharma. Eso es lo que nos hace budistas. There is another question here. Spontaneity has to do with no refraining.
I don't know. These are English words they're saying. I don't think they are same at all. What you're saying is refraining is is actually stopping oneself from doing something very bad or doing something actually both good and bad. That's a refrain. It's not really avoiding, but it's stopping oneself or refraining oneself. Spontaneity in English, as far as I understand, is a very different word. Spontaneity is more about natural, doing something very naturally, spontaneously meaning naturally, right? So from the English point of view, as far as I understand, they are not connected.
Entonces, yo no creo, porque pues refrenarse es parar o dejar de hacer algo específico, ¿sí? Entonces yo me refreno de algo, ¿sí? En cambio, espontaneidad, al menos en inglés, pues es una palabra muy diferente. Se refiere más a, digamos, a actuar de una manera más natural, no artificial. Entonces yo creo que no hay ninguna conexión entre una y otra. Okay, Khempo, thank you very much. There are no more questions, and you have to take a rest.
Yes, now there are other teachers coming up. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the first training. And then next Sunday, we'll start with the second training, which is regarding the samadhis. All right, so you guys have a very good rest of the Sundays. Enjoy your day and keep practicing. Yes, and then see you next Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khempo.
Thank
Entonces,
you.
con esto terminamos ya el primer
Khempo, thank you.
de disciplina, y en la próxima semana empezaremos con el segundo entrenamiento, el del samadhi. Ahora sí pueden despedirse.
Thank you.
Khempo.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Carlos, gracias, Ulquita.
Thank you.
Gracias, Carlos.
Thank you, Khempo. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Khempo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Gracias, Khempo.